Right, so I picked up these carbon fiber rim brake calipers here from AliExpress. They're super lightweight, look really cool on the bike if you ask me, and they're seemingly pretty well built as well, but there are definitely a couple of drawbacks with these things. So what do they like to ride? How much do they weigh? And how do they compare to these pretty bog standard aluminium calipers that I've been running for pretty much the last decade? Also, the design of these, pretty similar to some others that you can currently buy. So yeah, let's check them out. Right, so Shokz used to be called AfterShokz are dropping in to sponsor this one. So listening to music out on the bike was a big no-no for me. So I used to commute through central London, and navigating heavy traffic with my ears plugged up was, yeah, it was not ideal. But over the last 6 months, I've been using these bone-conducting headphones from Shokz, and they are a bit of a game changer. Not least because other road users are now blessed with my amazing voice.
Wanna be with me? I can make your wish come true. You gotta make a big impression. Gotta like what you do.
But for real, these are great. You can listen to all your stuff and still maintain spatial awareness out on the road, so you can kind of stay safe. But these are their latest Openrun Pro model. They got 10 hours of battery life. They're sweat and rainproof. They use 9th generation audio drivers to deliver some nice punchy bass with your music. And they use quick charge as well, so you can plug them in for 5 minutes and get an hour and a half listening time out of these things. But honestly, they're really cool. They easily slip underneath your helmet and your glasses. The physical buttons make it super easy to kind of play, pause, and adjust volume on the go. And the onboard microphones are really clear for answering calls as well. It's just super convenient not having to pull out your phone to sort out your music while you're on the bike. So yeah, they come in some funky colors, and if you want to check them out, use my link in the description. So yeah, massive thank you to Shokz for sponsoring and helping out what I do around here, basically. Anyway, that done, let's check out these brakes. Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another, oh my God, that's disgusting. Trace Fellow Production, my name, as always, is, it's Luke. Now, I have always been on the lookout for some lightweight rim brake calipers. I've used these trusty old Shimano Tiagra aluminium calipers here for many, many years, and they've served me very well. But the rim brakes are one of the last areas on this bike here that hasn't been upgraded. In terms of lightweight rim brake calipers, there are a couple of options out there, but the prices are frankly eye-watering. I mean, this aluminium set from a company called Cane Creek, yeah, they have a pretty solid reputation and they're nice and light at about 170 grams, but they're 655 quid or close to 900 bucks. I mean, look at carbon fiber varieties and it's even crazier. I mean, this set from THM, they have ones they call their Fibula calipers, a paltry, a frankly insignificant 1100 quid or close to 1500 bucks. So yeah, when I saw these carbon fiber bad boys from a brand called ZTTO on AliExpress for £140, very shortly after, £140 left my bank account. So yeah, I've paid for these calipers myself, and I've had them on the bike for about 2 months. So let's check them out. Okay, so first up, this is the box that they both came in. Pretty underwhelming, I've got to say, and not super robust either. You could quite easily crush it, but they both got to my house absolutely fine. And when I first got them out of the box, so this is the one for the rear brake here, I'll be honest with you, I was actually floored by the overall quality and finish of these things. So there are 4 carbon plates that make up the main body of the caliper. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, really nice consistent carbon weave and no sharp edges either. They have a nice chamfer on each of the carbon plates. If they were constructing these to the lowest possible price point, you'd assume that they would just kind of cut or mill the carbon into the right shape and be done with it. But they took the extra time and the kind of additional step in manufacture to add a nice chamfer to the edges of this carbon. Now, the aluminium parts for these calipers are also really well machined and nicely presented. Now, it's worth pointing out that on both of the calipers, there are basically no plastic parts. It's all carbon fiber, aluminium, and a few kind of steel fasteners and stuff. Now I'm pretty sure the aluminium parts aren't anodized. I think that black coating is, I'm pretty sure it's just painted on. But either way, the tolerances on some of these aluminium pieces are pretty damn good, at least from what I can see. Now there are some quite small, intricate aluminium parts in the construction here. I mean, even this little kind of cable tensioner up the top here is really well made. Machined from a kind of single piece of aluminium, no super sharp edges or anything like that. Yeah, really nice. The fasteners holding the caliper together, they're also seemingly pretty decent too. Now, often on these cheaper parts, the fasteners they tend to cheap out on, but these actually look really good. And none of them were loose out of the box as well, which is a kind of sign that it was put together well, at least. Now, another thing I noticed was that little white roller, which you might be able to see in there. Okay, so very quickly, this is how this thing functions. So you've got an aluminium arm which runs across the top there and connects to this side of the brake caliper, and then you've got a camming arm here. So when you pull on the camming arm with the cable, it kind of rocks up against that arm on the top there and compresses the caliper together. So something a little bit like that. And inside there, that little roller is made of nylon, which is a durable, low friction kind of bearing material, and basically indicates this thing isn't thrown together for the lowest possible price point. It's nicely put together. It's a nice object more than anything. It certainly doesn't scream low quality, that's for sure. It seems like they've put some thought into how this thing is put together, or at least that's what it seems like. We'll get into the actual performance of this caliper later. Now, weight-wise, what are we looking at? Well, firstly, let's baseline it against my trusty set of Tiagra calipers here. So these are aluminium calipers, and they're originally from a Tiagra 4700 group set. I sprayed them black years ago and the spray paint's starting to kind of chip off. But these come in at 353 grams for the pair of them. Now with exactly the same brake pads, so I swapped the blue pads over to these ZTTO carbon ones to keep things consistent. 162 grams for these carbon calipers. That's 191 gram weight saving. These calipers are basically less than half the weight of the Tiagra ones here. Pretty impressive, that's for sure. So these are nice and light, relatively inexpensive, and yeah, look pretty tasty as well. But what are these actually like to use out on the road? Right then, so here we are out on some pretty nice Oxfordshire country lanes this afternoon, and I've got these carbon calipers on the bike. So what are these actually like to use? Well, if I'm being completely honest, they're not very good. I think one of the adverts on AliExpress said something along the lines of, yeah, you can come to a screeching halt. Yeah, that's not exactly true. Now they will stop you, they will kind of get the job done, but just not as good as my Tiagra brakes that these replaced. Look, you're not going to be doing endos on the front with these brakes, that's for sure. So let me pull over to the side of the road and I'll try and explain what I'm on about. Okay, so the first thing to mention about these brakes is just the fact that they're very spongy. There's no way around it really. I mean, I even updated the cable housings for the front and the rear brake with this fancy Kevlar compressionless housing. So this stuff here is Jaguar KEB-SL cable housing, and it's got some Kevlar strands in there, and it's meant to reduce sponginess and give the brakes a kind of more direct feel, but it didn't really help. So let me explain. So this is kind of why they're so spongy. So I'll pull the brake just enough so the pads are kind of touching the caliper there. So you can see that. And then I'll just increase the pressure and watch how much that cable moves. Look at that sponginess there. So you increase the pressure and the whole caliper just absorbs all that tension. So kind of for the casual ride, it does provide pretty much all the stopping power that you need. I mean, I can certainly lock up the rear wheel without too much issue, but the real problems come in that kind of heavy emergency style braking, and because of the sponginess, that's kind of where these suffer a little bit. So let me kind of explain what I'm talking about. So my basic Tiagra brakes, it's obviously vastly oversimplified, but braking felt a bit like this. So the more you pull the lever, the more force is applied to the rim and the harder you brake. Essentially, with the carbon calipers, it feels much more like this. So braking feels linear up to a point, but at the top end, it definitely feels like it kind of drops off, which is demonstrated by the plateau there. when you're really squeezing the levers, it almost feels like the caliper itself soaks up any additional tension that you're putting through the brake cable. So regardless of how much more you squeeze at the top end, it doesn't transmit that power to the rim, or at least that's what it feels like. Now, this is only really applicable in emergency braking situations. The rest of the time, they actually feel fine. But you do definitely come across this when you use these out on the road. Now, because of the flexiness in the caliper that I've just explained, the one thing I would be wary of using these kind of calipers out and about is using them in the wet, because when it's hammering it down and when it's raining, what I tend to do is when I'm braking, I'll put a lot of pressure through the brake lever initially to kind of squeeze the pad onto the rim, clear off the water that's on there, and get some grip between the pad material and the rim surface. Now, this is especially important on carbon rims like these ones here that are notoriously bad at braking in the wet anyway. But just with these calipers, I don't feel like I can put enough pressure onto the rim to quickly clear off the water and start braking. So basically, braking in a hurry in the wet with these calipers, yeah, it's risky business. But even if it never rains where you live and you basically never need to emergency brake, there are still a couple of other issues to kind of be aware of with these calipers. So yeah, let me take you through those as well. Right then, the first issue, and yeah, it's a pretty big one. Some of you haven't subscribed and hit the like button. I ask you every episode and you still don't do it. I don't even know why I bother. Right then, the first issue, and it is a big one. These calipers are not very wide, like at all. So these wheels that I'm running here from Fastsports, they're a pretty standard width these days. So they're 26 millimeters external width on the rim. These calipers barely fit round these wheels. The only reason I'm able to get them to fit like at all really is the fact that I'm running these pads here from a company called Prime that just happen to be slightly slimmer than standard pads out of the box. If you want to run some slightly more traditional brake pads like these Swisstop Flash Pro black print pads here that I know quite a lot of you out there are very fond of, especially for carbon rims, then yeah, you're gonna struggle. So you can see in this clip that I've put a fresh set of those Swisstops into the caliper, and the maximum it opens to is 25.4 millimeters. So it wouldn't even fit over these rims that I've got on the bike. Put in the slightly slimmer profile Prime pads, and that goes up to 28.2 millimeters. So still not masses, but just enough to run these wheels, as long as your wheels run true. If you've got a little bit of a wobble on the wheels, then yeah, that's gonna be no bueno, basically. So the second big issue with these brakes is that the return springs on the back are just really weak, really weak actually. So I've not had any problems with the front, but the rear brake wasn't resetting fully, so it wasn't opening back up all the way when I released the brake at the front. Now, this even happened actually after I replaced all the cable housings with that Jaguar stuff that I mentioned earlier. So in the end, I resorted to a hack which I've used before, and I'm using a gear cable rather than a brake cable for the rear brake caliper. So they're 1.2 rather than 1.5 millimeters thick, so kind of more easily slip their way through the housing and the frame, and that solved the problem. Now, I was initially slightly worried that the braking strain of a gear cable wasn't going to be strong enough, but I've run them on rear brakes for thousands of miles in the past and never had any issues. So that's solved the problem. But overall, these brakes are hella spongy. They don't perform as well as my busted up Tiagra brakes. They don't fit most modern rims, and the return springs are really weak. So yeah, not good. But there's still one other issue kind of surrounding these brakes that we need to discuss. So after picking these calipers up from AliExpress, I started to do a little bit of digging around the design of these, and some of you lot in the last episode picked up on this as well. So if I put a picture of these ZTTO calipers up here, and then next to it a picture of a Ciamillo Lekki8 caliper, I'm sure you'll be able to see the ZTTO ones are, let's just say, heavily inspired by the much more premium Lekki8 calipers. Now, from what I can see, there are definitely a few differences. The Lekki8 calipers seem to have a much stronger return spring, the carbon fiber plates seem to be a little thicker, and the Lekki8 calipers use high-grade titanium for the fasteners, whereas these, yeah, these certainly don't. Now this happens all the time with these cheaper Chinese parts, so you need to kind of be careful you're not duped into thinking, yeah, that you're buying the genuine article. But the funny thing is, it's not just ZTTO making these reproductions. I've actually found these calipers all over the place. Now you can find completely unbranded ones from a brand called Light Pro, and even Walmart stocks them under 3 different brand names. But what I would say is that if you were to get a legitimate Lekki8 caliper, it's likely to be much better quality. For starters, they'll actually fit wider rims up to 28mm wide. The quick release catch actually does something, whereas on these, it opens the caliper an additional 0.5 millimeter. Plus, from what I've read, the Lekki8 calipers actually perform comparably to high-end offerings from SRAM and Shimano, whereas these ones certainly don't. So yeah, there it is, the good, the bad, and the spongy. So should you buy a pair? Well, stick around, because I'm about to wrap this bad boy up. Okay, so if you're desperately looking for a way to knock off those last few grams from your bike, and your wheels are under 26mm wide, and you run slimline brake pads, and your wheels run completely true, and you never cycle in the wet, then they might be worth a gander. But look, I know I've dunked on these calipers the whole episode basically, but after it's all done and dusted, I'm actually going to be keeping them on my bike here. They are super lightweight. They look really cool in my opinion, and I know the braking performance isn't staggering, but like I said before, it's more than enough for the kind of casual style riding that I tend to do. But I have one other question for you lot actually. Where do you stand on the topic of cheaper, in my case usually Chinese, knockoff products? So I was thinking about it this morning actually when I was having breakfast, because I was eating this yogurt which I bought from Lidl, which is a more budget friendly supermarket. Also all my normal spoons were in the dishwasher, hence the reason I'm using a serving spoon here. But this Lidl yogurt is nearly identical to one from a more expensive brand called The Collective. The shape of the pot is the same, the colours they use are very similar, they taste pretty much identical, and even the wording they use on the label is similar. They both have gourmet live yogurt written somewhere on the label. So when I was shopping in Lidl, I saw these yogurts on the shelf, and there were enough design cues that I bought them on the understanding that they were likely to be very similar to the more expensive option. But here's the deal, I wasn't duped into thinking I was buying the kind of genuine product. I mean, I was in Lidl at the end of the day. They do this kind of stuff all the time, kind of mimicking known consumer brands. So is it the same in this scenario, buying these calipers from AliExpress? Now, I want to highlight here, there is a distinct difference between counterfeit and knockoff. So counterfeit products, they're designed to deceive the buyer, basically, into thinking they're getting the genuine article. Whereas knockoff products, like the Lidl yogurt in this scenario, they resemble another item, but they're usually at a lower price point than the original that inspired them, and that's what leads to the sale. Now, with that in mind, how do you lot feel about navigating AliExpress? How much research do you do before buying stuff like this? Do you intrinsically know that some of the stuff you're buying is a knockoff and therefore kind of set your expectations accordingly? I mean, and ultimately, how comfortable are you buying products like these calipers from AliExpress? Yeah, sound off in the comments. I am really interested to know what you lot have to say about this actually, because yeah, it's a pretty meaty topic with a lot of grey areas. So yeah, let me know. Anyway, on that bombshell, yeah, it's the end of the episode. So subscribe if you like this kind of stuff. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this thing that I've done today. And if you've got any questions or any comments about any of the stuff that I've covered, because I've covered quite a lot of ground today, then yeah, leave me a comment down below and I'll try and get back to as many of you as I can. Anyway, that's it. There's no time for anything else. So ciao, ciao, sayonara. Right, so I've got one quick correction for you. I've just finished the edit upstairs and I noticed one little mistake. So at the very beginning of the video, I mentioned that my Tiagra brakes, so these ones here, I said I'd had them close to a decade, and well, it's wrong, it's false, and it is also impossible, because I looked and you could only buy Tiagra 4700 from June 2015, and I actually got these in December of that year. So yeah, not even close to a decade. It's like just over 6 years, I think. So yeah, clearly the perception of time is not strong point of mine, but I'm good at other things, I think. So yeah. Anyway, that was it. Just wanted to make that little correction. But yeah, hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time. So see you later. Bye.